Each Knight Rider vehicle cost just $1. However, there was an odd rule. After the show, all of the cars had to be destroyed. Only Hasselhoff was aware of the reason. He was battling personal demons at the same time. It was during these years that his addiction began. It got so terrible that his own daughter later recorded him on camera while intoxicated. Backstage, the show was collapsing. Yet on TV, everything appeared flawless. Hasselhoff held these secrets for 40 years. He is now at last sharing the entire depressing tale. On July 17, 1952, David Hasselhoff was born in Baltimore, Maryland. He came from a loving but strict Roman Catholic home. Joseph, his father, was a business magnate. Dolores, his mother, reared the children at home. David had 4 sisters and was the lone male. He had German ancestry. In 1865, his great-great-grandmother arrived from a town close to Bremen. As a child, that German connection would mean nothing. However, it would make him a national hero abroad years later. His early years were far from secure. Due to his father's work with Brink's Security, the family was always on the road. Baltimore came first, followed by Jacksonville, Florida, Atlanta, and Illinois. David never lingered long enough to establish himself. Being the new kid and always adjusting, he was shy. However, each time he had to start over, his communication skills improved. He probably wanted to be an actor, since he learned how to blend in and perform. He could at last be a stationary character on stage. He was only 7 years old when that happened. He was chosen to play a crew member on Captain Hook's ship in a local production of Peter Pan. On stage, the bashful boy shone. He didn't feel anxious. He was unencumbered. Everything changed because of that one position. He developed a passion for theater. He then enrolled in acting, singing, and dancing classes. He told everyone that Broadway was his only dream, and he did make a comeback to Peter Pan decades later, playing Captain Hook himself in UK theaters from 2010 to 2017. David was a teenager when the family eventually made LaGrange, Illinois, their home. He put himself into everything while attending Lyons Township High School. He was more than a mere pupil. He was the choir leader. He was the volleyball team's captain. He participated in the speech competition. He starred in plays in school. In the Fantastics, he even played the lead role. He had already developed a tool set that most actors take years to acquire by the time he graduated in 1970. Charisma, presence, physicality, and self-assurance. He tried Oakland University in Michigan after high school. Walt Disney established the California Institute of the Arts in 1961, and he soon transferred there. He was in California, exactly where he needed to be, thanks to that move. He developed his voice control, stage presence, and ability to blend dance, acting, and music at Cal Arts. He received his first significant break within 2 years of graduating. That break arrived in the most surprising manner. He consented to star in the low-budget film Revenge of the Cheerleaders in 1974 in an attempt to obtain his Screen Actors Guild membership. What is the name of his character? Boner. He believed no one would notice. However, 2 years later, the movie was released with the different title Caught with Their Pants Down. Although it was humiliating, he was able to obtain his SAG membership. Officially, he was an actor in the business. The soap opera followed. He was cast as Dr. William Snapper Foster Jr. on The Young and the Restless in 1975. He filmed more than 850 episodes throughout his 6-year tenure on the show. He was the family's guy, and had a serious and responsible demeanor. His admirers adored him. Furthermore, the show's creator didn't simply write him off when he made the decision to quit in 1982. The Foster family as a whole was phased out. He had grown to that size. Later that year, the real game changer arrived. He was personally selected to star in Knight Rider by NBC president Brandon Tartikoff. Tartikoff saw a combination of power and generosity that others did not. The program, which teamed David with KITT, a talking automobile, went viral all around the world. Not all of it was action. Saving lives, not taking them, was the goal. And the image of the tech-savvy, clean-cut hero stayed. In America, it made David famous, and in Germany it quickly turned him into a legend. But there was an odd diversion before Knight Rider. He starred in Star Crash in 1979, a sci-fi B-movie from Italy that aims to capitalize on Star Wars. David portrayed a glowing armored prince who says things like, "Papa, 3 minutes is enough." He gave it everything he had, even if it was absurd. Despite the film's failure, it demonstrated his willingness to take chances. In Knight Rider, David Hasselhoff did more than merely play the lead. He was experiencing it. But one man had a wild idea long before he got behind the wheel of KITT. Glenn A. Larson intended to combine a high-tech vehicle with a cowboy tale. According to him, Michael Knight was similar to the Lone Ranger, except that he had a talking Trans Am in place of a horse. NBC thought the concept was fantastic. Brandon Tartikoff, their president, had expressed dissatisfaction over the lack of talented male actors. What if the car was the star? Larson asked. It premiered on television on September 26, 1982, and lasted through April 4, 1986. FLAG, the Foundation for Law and Governance, a fictitious organization that dispatched Knight on covert missions, supported it. Knight Rider became one of Larson's biggest blockbusters, even though he had previously produced popular shows like Magnum PY and Battlestar Galactica. The moment was ideal. People in the 1980s who were car-obsessed couldn't get enough of it. However, developing essential IT behind the scenes wasn't simple. Pontiac's Trans Ams from 1982 were difficult to obtain. The team had just one at beginning. They got lucky after designer Michael Sheffey made it into the first KITT. A batch of brand new Trans Ams was destroyed in a rail accident. 10 of them were given to the show for just $1 each because GM was unable to sell them. The catch, after filming was finished, all of the cars had to be destroyed. That is still considered blasphemous by fans. Every kit was modified to fulfill a distinct function. Some had fiberglass bodies for light jumps and were specifically designed for stunts. Drivers were concealed in the back seats of some. Only close-ups and images involving Hasselhoff were shot in the hero automobile. The cost to modify each car was around $18,000. In order to differentiate KITT from the thousands of fan-made copies that began to appear, they gave him a facelift, spoilers, wings, and a scoop by Season 3. KITT was a marvel on screen. Its shell was resistant to explosives, bullets, and even heat up to 800 degrees. With turbo boost, it could leap 40 feet into the air and reach 60 miles per hour in 0.2 seconds. The anamorphic equalizer, a red scanning light on the hood that was modeled like HAL from 2001, A Space Odyssey, served as its eye. It could track Michael's vital signs, view an X-ray, and even switch to quiet mode for covert action. And actual automakers caught up years later. Ford installed seats with cardiac monitoring. By 2015, collision avoidance technologies were commonplace in European vehicles. However, it seemed like science fiction at the time. According to reports, KITT was valued $11.4 million. Each build actually cost more than $100,000. Fans, however, didn't care about any of that. Children desired the toys. The automobile was desired by teenagers. Parents wanted to bring their children to watch. The critics, it didn't appeal to them. It received 21% from TV Guide, 35% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences nevertheless made it popular. By 1983, the most popular Christmas present was KITT toys. What the reviewers said didn't matter. Knight Rider turned into a seismic event in culture. It was abrupt when the show stopped in 1986. However, the legend persisted. It was broadcast in numerous nations. It was loved and called Rerun. When NBC attempted to revive it in 2008, it failed. Hasselhoff was the only one who felt that they had missed what made the original so unique. Knight Rider wasn't just another job to him. He claimed that if he could, he would live for the rest of his days in that program. He was frequently approached by fans who stated, "You got me through a tough moment." He claimed that Knight Rider was about saving lives and giving people hope. Thus it meant more to him than all the fame from Baywatch. He referred to it as his most proud role. Although David Hasselhoff appeared to be the ideal action hero on TV, his experience driving Knight Rider was anything but seamless. The audience was unaware of how intricate, risky, and occasionally tragic the show's backstage operations actually were. The automobiles were where it all began. Knight Rider used 4 kits instead of just one. The hero car was there, complete with speaking panels, blinking lights, and a high-end appearance for close-ups. Then came the stunt cars, which, although having largely stripped-out interiors, were designed to manage fast maneuvers and chase scenarios. The jump cars came next, designed to withstand extreme airborne stunts using lightweight components and fiberglass bodies. The shells, hollow wrecks designed only to crash, came last. Stunt coordinator Jack Gill would lie flat within the passenger footwell, out of sight, steering while on his back in order to accomplish the magic trick of KITT driving itself. At first, Pontiac only offered them 3 Trans Ams. However, when a train carrying Trans Ams derailed in 1983, everything changed. For $1 apiece, GM sold 10 of them to the show. The catch: after filming, all of them had to be destroyed, and the wrecking ball was the source. The stunts were more than just showy, they were vicious. The automobile sailed over an 85-foot gully in Thousand Oaks, California, in one of the most well-known jumps ever seen on camera. The license plate tore off in mid-air because the jump was so violent. A mounted camera escaped. Hasselhoff even lost his leather jacket. 5 subsequent programs made use of that same shot. Both the vehicles and some of the stunt equipment perished. Jack Gill's body served as payment for those scenarios. Twice he shattered his back, once broke his neck. He wears a titanium plate around his neck that is secured with 6 screws today. He had to back KITT out of a moving semi at 50 miles per hour, while there was only 3 inches of space between the mirrors during one of his stunts. He had to lock the wheels, shift into gear, turn around and roar off as soon as the back wheels hit the road. Real concrete was used instead of CGI or cushioned walls. Real anguish and actual danger. Hasselhoff was also trained by Gill. They spent weeks at Saga Speedway practicing quick cornering, fishtails, tight turns and full spins. Hasselhoff was a pro driver after only a few episodes, sliding into the frame, quick exits and quick entrances. For safety reasons he was unable to perform the jump scenes, although he completed almost all of the other scenes. There was still tension though, particularly in regards to who was allowed to operate the hero vehicle. Gill had set up a mechanism to operate KITT for sequences involving self-driving cars while remaining hidden inside. However, after Hasselhoff intervened, altercations started. Hasselhoff would shout, "I have the wheel, I'm driving you crazy, no." From inside the seat, Gill would fire back. The nicest part, Gill joked, was that I could strike him whenever I wanted from inside. There were other conflicts on the shoot. The voice of KITT, William Daniels, was another competitor of Hasselhoff's. However, the two did not even cross paths while filming. Long after sequences were filmed, Daniels rehearsed his lines in a studio. Fans began to choose KITT over Michael Knight though. Hasselhoff took note. He pressed for additional lines from NBC. He even rewrote screenplays using his contract. Daniels, on the other hand, started to take KITT more seriously and guarded the persona, as though it were his own. It was during the Christmas party that they finally met uncomfortably. Hasselhoff struggled off camera. The show began to suffer because of his drinking. According to crew personnel, his fatigue, a code word for hangovers, caused filming to halt at least 7 times throughout season 3. Producers had to accommodate his sluggish morning recuperation during the pivotal 1984 episode Goliath Returns. His ex-wife would claim years later that he was already drinking excessively at the time, and when his daughter caught Dad intoxicated, shirtless, slurring, and attempting to eat a burger on the floor in 2007, the world witnessed it for themselves. The man who said that one man can change the world was unable to finish his lunch. The emotional weight followed. Randy, a 15-year-old leukemia patient, came to the set in 1983. Hasselhoff's parents wrote him a letter following Randy's passing. He was shaken. He began to see playing Michael Knight as more than just a job. It was a vocation. He began pressuring NBC to produce more in-depth reports, more about morals and less about explosions. However, he was crushed by the strain to live up to that ideal. It almost killed him. he stated afterwards. He claimed that in order to capture my attention, God's angels had to bring me to the verge of death and catastrophe. Following Knight Rider's conclusion in 1986, David Hasselhoff collided with a wall, not a real one, but the kind that most actors fall in love with after playing a memorable part. He was well known to everyone as Michael Knight, the man who could communicate with a car. There was nothing else Hollywood wanted to see him accomplish. His attempts at filmmaking failed. He had a stagnant career in America from 1986 to 1989. When he mentioned serious roles, everyone laughed. Later on, even Hasselhoff made a joke about how he was more famous for talking to KITT than for performing. Because of that slump, he looked in a direction that other American celebrities didn't, Germany. And that's where he made his fortune. He put out a song titled Looking for Freedom in 1988. Despite being an English rendition of a German hit, its message resonated. Germany remained divided into East and West, and there was a great need for something positive. The song became viral. It spent 25 weeks on the charts and held the top spot in West Germany for 8 consecutive weeks. It achieved platinum status after selling more than 500,000 copies. Hasselhoff was more than just a German celebrity. By 1989, he represented hope. He performed in front of 500,000 people on New Year's Eve atop the Berlin Wall the same year, singing his independence anthem as if it were a cry to arms, dodging fireworks, and sporting a flashing leather jacket and scarf. However, he continued to lose ground back in the United States. At that point, Baywatch was created. When the show debuted in 1989, it was a complete failure. It came in at number 73 out of 103 shows. When NBC terminated the production firm fell apart. Hasselhoff would have left, but most actors would have. He bet everything in 1991. He teamed up with the inventors, contributed his own funds, and purchased the rights. He was promoted to executive producer. In addition to star, he negotiated a share of future revenues, which is more significant. Nobody could have predicted the amount of money he would make from that arrangement. Over 1.1 billion people watched Baywatch every week at its height in 1996. At the time, that equated to 1 in 5 people on the planet. The program earned almost $1 billion in syndication revenue, was translated into 44 languages, and shown in 148 countries. Even the audience was taken aback. Women made up 65% of the audience. The show's blend of romance, action, and strong female characters appeals to a lot of people. Mitch Buchanan, played by Hasselhoff, rose to fame as a cultural figure. Pop history was shaped by the Rescue Boy, the red shorts, and the slow-motion runs. Hasselhoff made appearances in 220 episodes between 1989 and 2001. They didn't kill him off when he left before the last season. They just left the door open by making his character vanish in an undersea blast. He returned in 2003 to play a revived Mitch with amnesia at a Hawaiian wedding for Baywatch. In later years, he attempted to mock the figure, but the shadow of the red shorts persisted. Hasselhoff, however, was constructing an empire behind the scenes. During the height of the show's popularity, he was making $100,000 every episode, but the royalties were where the real money came from. According to reports, he was earning $4 million annually long after the show finished. To capitalize on the success of The X-Files, he turned the concept into films and a spin-off series called Baywatch Nights, which began as a detective series before oddly moving into supernatural fiction. His fortune dropped from $100 million to about $10 million due to divorce settlements, yet Baywatch continued to generate revenue. The show's HD remake in 2018 created new financial opportunities. The brand was not going to die. Hasselhoff was still a huge sensation in Europe at the time of all of this in America. He put out 12 compilations and 15 studio albums between the 1980s and the late 1990s. In order to balance his life, he performed in arenas, appeared on German TV, and traveled all over the world. Still starring in Baywatch and doing production work, he embarked on a freedom tour of Germany and Switzerland in 1990 alone. He put out 4 compilation albums in 1995. Despite his crazy work schedule, he maintained his brand in both realms. American television icon, European music phenomenon. David Hasselhoff almost drowned himself in early 2002 when he arrived at the Betty Ford Center in California. His body was in ruins. He later made a terrifying admission in 2011. He said that his blood alcohol content was the highest the facility had ever measured. He should have been dead, according to doctors. He was telling the truth. No one had ever survived such levels, as far as they knew. According to Hasselhoff, it wasn't for attention or celebrity. He wasn't playing the classic Hollywood ploy of going to rehab to preserve your reputation. He had no other option, so he went. His body was disintegrating. After years of excessive drinking, fame and pressure had finally caught up with him. However, this was not the start of his demise. He made an attempt to receive assistance back in 2001. After spending 8 days in recovery, he called for a cab and left. He didn't return home. He had a drink. He was unconscious in a hospital bed at the end of that night. His first true wake-up call was that. Soon later, he publicly acknowledged that he had a problem and checked himself back into rehab. Addiction, however, is a chronic condition. Next was May 3, 2007. Something he would never forget was captured on tape by his 16-year-old daughter, Taylor Ann. Hasselhoff was so inebriated that he could hardly eat a cheeseburger while lying shirtless on the floor of a hotel room in Las Vegas. It was a heartbreaking video, because of what his daughter stated, not because of his appearance. You could hear her begging, "Please promise me that you won't have any alcohol tonight." It wasn't that she was mean, she was in a difficult situation. She later claimed that since he never recalled, she had filmed it to show him what he was like when intoxicated. In the end, that film was viewed by almost 1 billion people. It turned into one of the internet's earliest viral moments. For a lot of people, it was their first glimpse of how far he had fallen. Things worsened that same year. During his contentious divorce from Pamela Bach in July 2006, Hasselhoff made a big scene at Heathrow Airport. He never made it to Los Angeles, where he was meant to board a plane. According to witnesses, he was wobbling, had an alcoholic odor, and was unable to stand. He was denied a flight by airline employees. He expressed his distress at the divorce to them. His publicist stated he decided to take a later flight and blamed antibiotics. However, the harm had already been done. That same day, his divorce was formalized in Los Angeles. The entire globe was now observing. The legal case wasn't the end of the divorce. It overflowed into the news stories. Court records that were supposed to remain confidential were inadvertently made public in August 2006. The specifics were shocking. Bach was charged by Hasselhoff with cocaine use. Bach accused him of being unfaithful and abusive. It was unsightly and exacerbated the situation. He was perceived by the public as more than just a struggling celebrity. They were seeing his life's darkest moments unfold like a soap show. A contentious custody dispute also arose from the divorce. Each parent initially had a daughter. Haley stayed with her mother, and Taylor Ann stayed with her father. That was short-lived. Pamela Bach said that Hasselhoff had been abusive and applied for a restraining order. The judge ordered them to avoid one another but disputed it. The court granted Hasselhoff complete custody of both girls a few months later. He utilized this information years later to support his request for alimony to be reduced from $21,000 to $10,000 per month. Hasselhoff began to gain insight in spite of all the suffering. Something had changed by 2010. He started laughing at his past and stopped running away from it. In fact, he made a joke about the notorious burger footage during his Comedy Central roast. The roast was therapeutic, he told interviewers. He was at last strong enough to discuss his past, even though he wasn't proud of it. He claimed that in order to stop him, God's angels had to bring him to the brink of death. He was able to confront the truth thanks to his spiritual enlightenment. He had almost ruined himself. He also made an effort to re-establish his romantic life. From 1984 to 1989, he was married to Catherine Hickland for 5 years. An episode of Knight Rider had even reproduced their wedding. He first met Pamela Bach a few months after the divorce. She had made an appearance in a TV episode, but nothing transpired at the time. After meeting again at a nightclub, they were married in 1989. Haley was born in 1992, while Taylor Ann was born in 1990. The marriage ended in disarray after 16 years. After a period of not dating in public, Hasselhoff began dating Hayley Roberts in 2011, a Welsh lady he met while filming Britain's Got Talent. After 7 years of dating, they were married in Italy in 2018. As their vacation in the Maldives was coming to an end, another tragedy struck. Pamela Bach was discovered dead on March 5, 2025, at the age of 62. She died by suicide according to reports. When family members were unable to contact her, police were contacted. Hollywood was taken aback by the news. In a brief statement, Hasselhoff requested privacy. Her passing resurrected old scars, but the pair had already gone through one of the most bitter divorces in the history of celebrities. The pain was left to their daughters, who are now in their 30s. David Hasselhoff made a statement in January 2021 that altered the perception of Knight Rider among fans. The show was marketed as a sci-fi adventure about a talking, high-tech car for nearly 40 years. Hasselhoff, however, had a different perspective. He stated, "It's not about a talking car, it concerns Michael and KITT's relationship. It also has to do with the action. Additionally, one man can have an impact. Everything changed with just one comment. The indestructible shell, turbo boost, self-driving mode, and fancy electronics were the main marketing points in the beginning." For Hasselhoff, however, the true tale was always the emotional connection. He doubled down when he spoke with Kelly Clarkson in June 2021. "Everything is exactly what we came up with back in the day," he remarked, referring to the past 36 or 40 years. "The automobiles converse. The automobiles park and drive themselves." The tech no longer impressed him. That was old news to him. The relationship between man and machine was what counted. The fans had missed that transition from machine to meaning. Hasselhoff, however, never did. He also revealed something unexpected behind the scenes. For him at least, the show wasn't really about acting. He admitted in 2021 that he relied more on his driving prowess than his acting abilities. "I wanted to get really good at driving," he stated. "I could show you the reverse 180 in 5 minutes. There was no CGI back then. Everything was deadly and genuine." He said, "We did everything by the seam of our pants. Spraying WD-40 on the tires, spinning out, and racing through scenes without a second take is his favorite trick. They would shout, 'Knight Rider, action!' and I would simply say, 'Woo-hoo!'" He chuckled. "You were compensated for that. Is it not unbelievable?" What he saw to be inferior acting moments were concealed by that unadulterated joy. However, it was successful. Fans recall the acrobatics, the speed, and the yelling. Hasselhoff also made sure it appeared enjoyable, which it was. However, the enjoyment was short-lived. Hasselhoff had been fighting to revive Knight Rider since 2013. For over 10 years, he held the rights, but nothing changed. He said, "I couldn't get a bite." Screenwriter TJ changed that. Fixman joined the endeavor as a huge admirer of Knight Rider.